A letter that was written by Jennifer Sheehan, the RNC's legal counsel in 2008, appears to state that no state delegate to the GOP convention is bound by his state to vote for a particular candidate. This would make Romney's victory in the first round of voting at the convention in Tampa rather unlikely.
Jennifer Sheehan, legal counsel for the RNC, plainly stated in a letter to Nancy Lord, Utah National Committee woman, several weeks before the convention, the RNC does not recognize a state's binding of national delegates, but considers each delegate a free agent who can vote for whoever they choose. And the National Convention allows delegates to vote for the individual of their choice, regardless of whether the person's name is officially placed into nomination or not. And that statement is about as clear as it gets.
It's the big what-if question. What if Paul's supporters just ignore the binding rules and vote their conscience?
Delegates are not bound to vote according to how most delegates from their state are voting. They go on to say delegates can vote according to their own judgment and conscience.
If Paul's supporters were not bound, they may indeed have the numbers and therefore the means to stop Romney in the first round of voting. And why shouldn't they? After all, look at all the cheating that's been being done in Romney's favor by the party. For example, in Oklahoma, party officials pulled a ballroom divider out to separate Ron Paul supporters and keep them from participating. Later, they turned out the lights, and votes that were done by voice, clearly that were lost, were declared won. In Alaska, party officials defeated the majority by retaining the committees which interpreted the rules, and later, after taking the delegation, reluctantly gave up the party control to the new majority, but transferred all the money out of the Republican Party accounts. It should be noted that they had made the delegates pay to participate, some up to $300. In Virginia, at a district convention, officials coaxed the Ron Paul delegation outside and then locked the door. The pastor of the church that was hosting the event was himself locked outside. In Missouri, officials had all the delegates sign up in the county conventions and then had the county chairman take the rolls outside and lock them in their car. That way, they could block the roll call voting and then have their chairman declare lost voice votes as won. In Maine, they completely left out known Ron Paul supporting counties and didn't even include their votes. There was so much blatant cheating in all the states, officials appointing themselves as chairman, ignoring crowd screams of division, which means count the votes, ignoring requests from the audience and writing in the wrong number of votes, keeping the written ballots in unlocked rooms overnight with the boxes not sealed and numbered, and on and on and on.
The delegate process was actually designed to entrust a group of voters with the power to override the popular vote in each state in order to ensure that the best candidate is chosen. Keep in mind, the Republican and the Democratic parties are not government agencies. They're private organizations, more like clubs. So voting within a party is not bound by election law.
In my opinion, it not only provides a moral justification for Paul's people to refuse to play ball at the convention, but more importantly, it explains why such hardball could actually work. After all, which fair-minded American wouldn't like to see justice be done? Which of them wouldn't think that the Paul people were just doing no more than giving as good as they had gotten, especially when the nation is reminded that the GOP was bound by its own rules when it chose to provide material support to Romney while the race is still going on. Imagine it. At last, the revolution would have to be televised. And what good TV it would be. What could the GOP do about it? If it were to disqualify all those self-unbinding delegates, the fracture, and more importantly, the story it told, would be huge. The Democrats would eat it up, and the GOP would have just told 20% of its own base that they're not wanted. Even if Romney still could win the nomination, the GOP would have lost the election. So, the better course would be for the GOP to count Paul's delegates' votes, and Romney would be unlikely to win in the first round. This idea that he could beat Obama would clearly be tarnished, and that's when the narrative would really change. Everyone knows that in the second round, Romney's vote would fall, making him less credible, and here's the safest bet in American politics: Paul's rise, making him the most exciting ticket in town. People get very excited about an underdog who can win, especially if he's an underdog that was kept down by nefarious means. Cheating at the polls, media lies, and then media complete blackout. I think Dr. Paul might be the winner of a contest called America's Least Publicized Candidate for President.
The national media isn't telling you something very important. This past weekend, Congressman Ron Paul swept the delegates in 2 states, in Nevada and in Maine. At this point, all the delegate momentum appears to be on his side. So, much of what we've been telling you for months has now finally been mentioned by several national outlets. Bloomberg Business, U.S. News and World Report, even radio host Mark Levin this week have finally started to hint at the idea that, well, maybe Tampa isn't going to be inevitable after all.